Welcome to PoliSports Tea Time with BY's PoliSports Podcast, the Cess Talks Sports, where sports, power, and politics get poured straight, no chaser. Hey, we diving into the Upshot League. 4 teams, 4 cities, 1 bold experiment. But the real question isn't about height, it's about intent. Is this league empowering women players or just profiting off the market the W built? We've seen this before. Women's sports gain traction and suddenly investors, influencers, and entrepreneurs flood in claiming they're changing the game. The real T, who's holding the power? Ownership of players or another system of control and new packaging? This is bigger than basketball. It's about credibility, control, and the future of the women's game. The Upshot League could be a turning point, but the question is turning toward what? On one side, grassroots energy, athletes demanding equity, representation, ownership. On the other, corporate money chasing a trend. It's evolution versus exploitation, and the outcome could rewrite the space women athletes move in. As we sip this tea, think deeper. Who benefits when new leagues emerge? Who gets the seat at the table, and who's still left outside? Because when the game shifts, the politics shift too. And to break it all down, we got the political sharpshooter, the truth dropper, the system checker, my partner in PoliSports analysis, the one and only Political Lil.
Oh, thank you, Auntie Cess. And you're right. This Upshot conversation is bigger than basketball. What we've witnessing is a strategic reconfiguration of influence. It's not just about who's on the court. It's about who's behind the curtain pulling the strings. When we look at this new league, we've got to read it both as a cultural event and a political maneuver. Because every time a new women's sports initiative emerges, it challenges the existing power structure. But it also reveals who's really positioned to capitalize. So while the press releases talk about innovation and opportunity, we'll be looking at alignment, who's funding it, who's profiting, and how it connects to the larger political economy of women's sports. So let's get into it. The Upshot League. Is it a genuine power move for women or just another political play dressed up as progress?
Let's set the stage for what the Upshot League really is. Officially, it's a pro-women's basketball league tipping off May 2026. The concept, keep it regional, keep it intimate, build it from the ground up. A developmental platform where players can hoop, grow, and showcase talent, whether it's during the W offseason or outside the system altogether. Leading the charge, Donna Orinder, former WNBA president, one of the architects who stabilized the league in its early years, a business mind who knows the sport and the politics around it. And backing her up in basketball operations, Taj McWilliams Franklin, 6-time All-Star, 2-time champ, executive savvy plus player credibility gives the Upshot League instant legitimacy. But here's the real play. They're not chasing New York, LA, or Chicago lights. They're planting roots in the Southeast. The 4 founding franchises, the Greensboro Groove, the Charlotte Crown, the Savannah Steel, led by Coretta Brown, former North Carolina standout, and the Jacksonville Waves. 4 cities with deep basketball DNA, strong HBCU ties, and vibrant sports cultures that rarely get national shine. That's intentional. That's strategy.
This regional model might sound small scale, but it's actually strategic. It's about accessibility. They're looking to build loyal local fan bases rather than competing directly with the WNBA's national brand. That's smart business and political positioning. It allows the Upshot League to experiment with ideas that could either complement or challenge the existing system. But let's not romanticize it too much. This approach comes with risk. Funding, marketing, reach, and media coverage will all play a role in whether this league finds staying power. Without major TV deals or corporate sponsorships, local enthusiasm can only go so far. The real question is whether the Upshot League can build enough momentum to sustain itself beyond the hype of the launch day. Still, I will give them this. There's something refreshing about a league that's not pretending to be something it's not. They're owning their lane, focusing on regional growth, player development, and community connection. And that's a blueprint we haven't really seen executed right in women's basketball. Now, what makes the Upshot League so fascinating is that it's positioning itself in the gaps between the college system, the WNBA, and the overseas market. In a lot of ways, it's acknowledging what women athletes have been saying for years. There aren't enough viable places to play, earn, and grow once college ends. So the Upshot League could fill that void, giving players a domestic alternative that doesn't require uprooting their lives overseas. But it's also a political move. And I don't mean just Capitol Hill politics. I mean the politics of visibility, access, and legitimacy. Now, Donna Orinder knows how to work within the system, but she also knows how to challenge it just enough to open new doors. Pairing her leadership with Taja's credibility sends a message. This isn't a vanity project. It's a structural play. So when we talk about the rise of the Upshot League, really talking about the calculated power shift, one that might not look revolutionary on the surface, but could quietly rewire the ecosystem of women's basketball from the inside out.
Now, let's talk timing, because in sports and in politics, timing is everything. And the Upshot League's timing, that's not luck, that's calculation. While the WNBA is in the middle of its biggest labor showdown in decades, players opting out of the CBA, here comes a shiny new league saying, we got next. The union is fighting for real stakes, revenue sharing, better travel, pay that matches the billion-dollar growth they built. And right as that fight heats up, the Upshot League shows up, offering players another option. This isn't just competition, it's about control. WNBA players want ownership, equity, and a seat at the table. Now another league arrives, familiar faces at the top, but the same old power structure. That can be leverage for players, or a distraction that weakens their position. And here's where politics gets slick. When workers organize, new alternatives suddenly appear. On the surface, it looks like freedom and choice. Underneath, it can dilute power. Not saying that that's the Upshot League's play, but the timing raises the question. Because history shows when women demand economic justice in sports, somebody always tries to change the subject.
The optics is fascinating. The WNBA is having a record-breaking viewership, record attendance, and a brand new $2.2 billion media deal. And still, its labor foundation is shaking. It's the same story we've seen in corporate America. When workers get too organized, leadership looks for other ways to maintain leverage. The Upshot League, intentionally or not, enters that ecosystem like a chess piece being moved right when the board is on fire. If this league succeeds, it could either empower players with more options or fragment their power base. That's the tension. And make no mistake, investors, sponsors, and even the WNBA executive are watching closely. The politics of this movement aren't happening in a vacuum. They're happening while the entire women's basketball economy is being reinvigorated, literally and figuratively. The timing isn't just convenient, it's political timing. When one system starts to shift, power brokers look for new systems to maintain influence. The WNBA players opting out of their CBA is a radical move. It's labor's organizing at its finest. They're saying, we built this league, now we want a real stake in it. And that declaration shakes corporate and institutional powers to its core. Enter the Upshot League, and suddenly the narrative changes. Instead of everyone focusing on the WNBA labor demand, attention gets divided. New storyline, new headlines, new investment. That's how power moves, quietly, subtly, but with purpose. And that's what makes this moment so important to unpack. Because if Upshot League truly centers players, not just in performance, but in ownership, governance, and profit sharing, then it becomes a revolutionary development. But if it mirrors the same hierarchies the WNBA players are challenging, then it's not a disruption, it's a distraction. So as we move forward tonight, we're not just asking who's playing the game, we're asking who's playing the politics behind it.
Let's stir the pot on what's been simmering. Representation. You can't talk about power in women's basketball without asking who's getting chances and who's getting left out. The WNBA is facing a coaching crisis. Nearly 41% of head coaches gone in the past year. That's not just turnover. That's instability. And look at who's filling those seats. Not one black woman head coach in the league. Not one. Even though black women have proved themselves at every level. Players, mentors, leaders. That's why the Upshot League naming Coretta Brown head coach of the Savannah Steel hit different. She's put in the work. She knows the game. And now she finally gets the reins to build from the ground up. A move like that signals the Upshot League could be a space where black women don't just coach. They lead. Talent has never been an issue. Access has. History is full of black women overlooked for leadership, while others with the right image or connection slide right in. With the WNBA reshuffling, there's a window opening. If the Upshot League is intentional, it could rewrite that narrative from day one. But here's the catch. We've seen this before. New leagues launch with promises of diversity, then shift the goalposts once the money moves. So the question isn't, will they hire black women? It's, will they empower them? Will they give real authority to shape programs and build cultures that reflect the players? Or will it stop at optics?
And let's not overlook the pipeline issue. With so many black women being displaced from the WNBA and the NCAA coaching roles, the Upshot League has a chance to become a re-entry point, a space for those leaders to not only return to the sidelines, but redefine what leadership in women's basketball looks like. If they get this right, it could send ripples through the entire ecosystem. That's exactly the point. Representation isn't just about visibility on the bench. It's about who's shaping the system from within. When you have women like Coretta Brown in leadership, it signals something powerful. That experience, integrity, and culture understanding, it really matters. What's happening now is that the WNBA internal instability has created a leadership vacuum. Coaches with years of experience, especially black women, are being left without platforms. The Upshot League could fill the gap, not just by hiring them, but by giving them the resources to innovate and grow the game. That's how true equity looks. Not token gestures, but structural opportunities. And it's not just about coaching. It's about executive roles, front office decision makers, and ownership stakes. Because when black women lead at those levels, the entire culture of the game shifts. From how players are treated to how communities are engaged. If the Upshot League wants to make a real mark, it has to start here. So while the WNBA recalibrates, the Upshot League has a historic opportunity to become a sanctuary for black women in basketball leadership. The question is, will they seize it or will they repeat the same old playbook?
Lil, let's pull the curtain back and talk about what really drives it all. Money. In women's basketball, economics isn't just dollars and cents, it's value and visibility. The business of women's sports is finally catching up to its cultural momentum. The WNBA locked a $2.2 billion media rights deal, viewership is smashing records, merch is moving, but players, the faces of the game, are still fighting for a fair share. That's the irony of success. The higher the league climbs, the harder the battle over who controls the revenue. And right in that tension, the Upshot League steps in, leaner, more flexible, betting on regional markets and direct fan engagement through streaming and socials instead of big network deals. But here's the real question. Is that independence or just a smaller slice of the same pie? Because media access shapes perception, and perception drives investment. If the Upshot League doesn't control its narrative, the mainstream will define it. And history tells us how that usually goes for women's sports, especially when black women are leading. The money ties back to market strategy. By planting in southeastern cities, the Upshot League is tapping loyal but underdeveloped economies, HBCU roots, strong college hoops bases, communities that ride hard for local teams. Smart play, but risky, because these aren't major media hubs. Success depends on community buy-in and consistent storytelling. That's why media matters most. If the league invests in its own content, docs, behind-the-scenes access, player-led storytelling, they can build brand loyalty money can't buy. If they wait for mainstream validation, they'll end up sidelined while somebody else owns the headline.
Exactly, Auntie Cess. Economic in women's basketball has always been tied to visibility. Who gets seen, who gets sold, and who gets paid. And right now, the system rewards visibility over equity. That's why you see certain narratives over amplified. They generate clicks and control the market narrative. Meanwhile, the broader ecosystem of talent, especially black women, continues to be undervalued despite being the culture engine of the sport. What the Upshot League could do, if it's smart, is redefine what value looks like. Instead of measuring worth purely in sponsorship dollars or TV contracts, they can measure it in ownership, representation, and sustainability. Give players partial equity. Build direct-to-consumer platforms and let fans subscribe, interact, and invest in the league itself. That's the new frontier, the people's economy of sports. But let's be honest, we're at a crossroad. The WNBA money is growing, but so are the divides. The Upshot League could either become a complement that expands the ecosystem or a competitor that exposes the inequities. Either way, the economic game is changing. And in that change lies a deeper truth. Whoever controls the narrative controls the market. Whoever controls the market controls the future of women's basketball.
Let's get into what really makes or breaks a league: economics and exposure. Ideas are cool, but without funding, visibility, and fan buy-in, even the best concepts fade quick. So the question is, can the Upshot League actually compete? Their foundation looks like a mix of private investors and regional sponsorship. Double-edged sword. More autonomy, less cushion if the money don't hit early. They're courting HBCUs, local coalitions, and community-based brands, banks, health systems, regional companies. That fits the Southeast footprint, but it means every city has to carry its own economic weight. Exposure is where the game shifts. The Upshot League is entering a crowded media lane, but they're hinting at a digital-first model: streaming, socials, player-led storytelling. If they lock down a strong streaming partner, or even build their own subscription setup like a mashup of YouTube TV plus League Pass, that's disruptive. Fans want more than highlights, they want connection. But the competition is stacked. Unrivaled, co-founded by Nafisa Collier and Breanna Stewart, comes with TNT deals and $100 million in backing. Athletes Unlimited is already established with ownership points and a unique format. Both have trust, both have big media relationships. The Upshot League, new kid on the block, gonna have to hustle hard for the attention. Which brings us to the political question. What's the NBA's play here? Is the Upshot League really trying to rival the Dub, or is it angling as a feeder system? Close enough to support, but never a real threat. That distinction matters. One path is independence, the other keeps the power right where it's always been.
If the Upshot League truly wants to compete, it'll have to embrace bold moves, transparency in finances, equity in leadership, and a media strategy that doesn't rely on traditional gatekeepers. The fans have shown they're ready to support women's basketball, but they want authenticity, access, and innovation, not a prepackaged version of the same old system. Competing in today's sports economy is about more than funding. It's about narrative and networks. The Upshot League has to build both simultaneously. On one side, they've got to secure serious financial backing. On the other, they've got to own their media voice. If they allow outside forces to define their identity, they'll lose control even before the first tip-off. What makes this moment unique is that the Upshot League can learn from what Unrivaled and Athletes Unlimited have already tested. Unrivaled proved there's an appetite for women-led player-owned sports, while Athletes Unlimited showed that fans will follow creativity when the product feels different and genuine. The Upshot League could combine those lessons, building something rooted in regional pride, player empowerment, and community economics. But it has to decide early whether it's here to cooperate or compete. If it plays too safe, it becomes a stepping stone. If it leads into innovation and funding, storytelling, ownership, it could become a legitimate player in the global women's basketball market. The bottom line is this: exposure without autonomy is just visibility without power. The Upshot League real challenge isn't just to be seen, it's to be self-sustaining.
Let's talk about the soul of this whole play: culture and community. Beyond the money in the basketball, what might make the Upshot League stick is its regional identity. The unapologetic tie to the Southeast: Greensboro, Charlotte, Savannah, Jacksonville. Cities with basketball roots and cultural flavor. Communities that birthed legends, nurtured HBCUs, and carried women's hoops long before it was profitable. So when the league says community first, that's not just a slogan, that's the heartbeat. But it's also a statement. The Southeast has been overlooked for a national shine. Networks chase New York, LA, Chicago, while the South gets treated like background noise. The Upshot League flipping the script says, we see the fans, we see the culture, we see the stories. That's politics, redistributing attention and investment back to the people who built the game. This could birth a new kind of sports economy, one rooted in proximity and pride, each team reflecting its city: Savannah Steel, Southern grit; Coastal strength; Charlotte Crown, legacy, leadership; Greensboro groove, college town energy; Jacksonville waves, resilience, motion. Smart strategy. It makes the league more than a product. It becomes a movement. But fans feel part of something culturally relevant and locally grounded. They don't just buy tickets, they build loyalty. And that's something big markets can't buy, no matter how much money they throw at them.
You're right on point, Auntie says. The cultural strategy is the secret weapon, because what the Upshot League is doing, whether intentionally or not, is building a new kind of sports citizenship. They're asking fans to invest emotionally, not just financially, to see their cities, their culture, their history represented on the court. It's also a chance to redefine the aesthetics of women's basketball. The Southeast brings a unique blend of artistry, resilience, and storytelling. And if the league embraces that, it could build a brand that feels organic, grassroots, and deeply connected to the community. That's how you turn casual spectators into lifelong fans. And let's not overlook the power of proximity to HBCU culture. The league's footprint sits right in the middle of that energy, from North Carolina A&T to Savannah State to Florida A&M. And that connection can be a pipeline for fans, talent, and culture synergy. If the Upshot League leans into that alignment, hiring HBCU grads, spotlighting local artists, and building partnership with Black-owned businesses, it can create a blueprint for sustainability, community-driven sports. So while the national media might be debating whether the Upshot League can compete, what they're missing is this. It's not just about basketball. It's about belonging. And in the South, where people feel seen, they show up in numbers and they stay.
Let's get into what might be the Upshot League's real secret sauce. Culture and community. Look at where they planting roots. Greensboro, Charlotte, Savannah, Jacksonville. That's not just geography. That's a statement. These aren't random picks. These cities carry deep basketball traditions, cultural pride, and community energy running through the Southeast. The league isn't chasing bright lights. It's chasing belonging. These are audiences big league marketing ignores, but who always show up. The heartbeat of Black Southern sports culture, HBCU classics, Friday night high school gyms, rivalries that feel like family reunions. The Upshot League stepping into that space saying, we see you, we value you, we're building with you. And that's the smart play. Sustainable sports don't survive without local buy-in. Just ask the MEAC, the SWAC, or college football. It's culture that keeps the stands packed. Tailgates, bands, partnerships, traditions that feel like home. If the Upshot League taps that spirit, they don't get just fans, they get believers. Add to that, the Southeast has been a cradle of women's basketball talent for decades. From the Carolinas to Florida, elite players come out of this region every year. By building here, the Upshot League isn't just chasing fans, it's anchoring a developmental pipeline right where the talent already grows. Strategic win, cultural win. But here's the key. Authentic engagement. No drop in, play, and leave. This league has to embed in the fabric. Youth clinics, HBCU partnerships, local media, pathways for Black women in coaching, broadcasting, management. That's how you turn a league into a movement.
If they get that part right, they can rewrite the playbook for how women's sports grows. Not from the top down, but from the ground up. Because culture is currency. When people feel seen and included, they'll invest, not just financially, but emotionally. The Upshot League Southeast strategy is more than geography. It's cultural politics in motion. They've positioned themselves in a region with some of the deepest sports traditions in America, but also some of the most complex histories around race, gender, and visibility. So this isn't just about building a league. It's about reclaiming a space. When you put women, especially Black women, at the center of sports culture in the South, you're doing more than expanding a brand. You're shifting the narrative that's been dominated for generations. If the Upshot League gets intentional about that, about amplifying Southern pride, Southern players, and Southern leaderships, they could become the blueprint for inclusive sports development nationwide. And the timing couldn't be better. Fans are hungry for authenticity. They want stories that reflect their community and representation that feels real. So the Upshot League challenge will be staying true to its mission as the money and the media attention grows. Because as we've seen before, culture can't just be about marketing strategy. It has to be about mission statement. If they stay rooted in that, the Southeast might just become the new epicenter of women's basketball. And the Upshot League could be the heartbeat leading the way.
We talked about the promise, the purpose, the power of the Upshot League. But here's the reality. Every new sports venture shines at launch. Staying power is what separates hype from history. That's the real test. Women's sports are still climbing uphill, fighting for consistent funding, coverage, and attendance. Even the WNBA and Athletes Unlimited battle scheduling, broadcast visibility, and brand buy-in. For the Upshot League, the question is simple. Can they build a system that's not just inspirational, but operational? Sustainability ain't just signing checks. It's building a model that feeds itself. Long-term sponsors, reliable media deals, balancing affordability with professionalism. Ticket prices, marketing, travel, player salaries, every price matters. If the structure doesn't work, the story won't last. Perception is another heel. Fans have seen new leagues rise and fold. The Upshot League has to prove early this isn't a side project or short-term play. They need credibility in leadership and in execution. Donna Orander brings legitimacy. Taj McWilliams Franklin brings on-court authority. But consistency is the test. Not just season 1, seasons 2, 3, and 4. And the truth, for women's sports to thrive, the product has to be top tier. Competitive games, balanced rosters, storytelling that connects fans beyond the scoreboard. If the Upshot League can showcase both skill and personality, gameplay plus the human stories behind the jerseys, that's where sustainability takes root.
Exactly, Auntie. Sustainability isn't just an economic issue, it's a structural and a cultural one. The Upshot League has to be intentional about how it builds its foundation. Who owns the teams? Who controls the revenue? What's the path for players to grow, get paid fairly, and stay visible? Those are power questions. If the league wants to be more than a feeder system, it has to redefine the ecosystem. That means equity in leadership, transparency in structures, and player-first culture. We can't keep building leagues that depend on goodwill alone. We need infrastructure that allows women, especially Black women, to build equity in the game they sustain. And I'll add this, sustainability also depends on innovation. The league that survives are the ones that adapt, whether it's through streaming partnerships, NIL collaborations, or community-based funding models. The Upshot League has to be nimble. They can't just copy the WNBA model, then have to evolve it. And when you zoom out, this is where the bigger picture really kicks in. Because this isn't just about whether the Upshot League can stand on its own. It's about whether women's basketball can grow without dividing. There's a real conversation to be had about whether multiple women leagues strengthen the ecosystems or stretch it thin. On one hand, more leagues mean more opportunities, more contracts, more visibility, more voices. But on the other hand, fragmentation can make it harder to build unified momentum. And that's why the Upshot League choice of the southeastern cities is smart. Greensboro, Charlotte, Savannah, Jacksonville. These are mid-sized markets with deep community roots. They can build from the ground up, connect directly to the local fan base, and tap into regions where women basketball already thrives at the grassroots level. And let's not overlook the impact of HBCU athletes. This could be a game changer, finally giving players from smaller programs who might not get a WNBA look a place to grow their game and get paid for their craft. That kind of developmental pipeline could shift recruiting patterns, strengthen community investment, and create a narrative of inclusion in professional basketball. The Upshot League could become more than a new business model. It could become a cultural bridge. If done right, it could connect HBCU, local economies, and fans who've been left out of the major market spotlight. But if the league loses focus, it could just recreate the same divisions between big names and grassroots, between visibility and accessibility. The future of women's basketball depends on collaboration, not competition. Growth doesn't have to mean we divide. If the Upshot League can build power within communities, not just in them, we could be witnessing the start of something that redefines the entire women's basketball ecosystem.
We've broken down the rise of the Upshot League, the timing, the coaching, the economics, the community play, and the takeaway is this. Upshot isn't just a new schedule or a set of teams. It's a potential shift in power, visibility, and access. Leadership, intentional hiring, and regional focus can change the trajectory of women's sports. Upshot has a chance to fill gaps the system left open, giving overlooked players and coaches a platform and connecting mid-sized cities hungry for representation straight to the game. The HBCU angle is huge. A real pipeline for athletes from historically Black colleges and universities to showcase talent, gain pro experience, and build networks that used to be limited. That changes who gets visibility in women's basketball. Of course, challenges remain. Funding, coverage, consistency. But what's different here is the intentionality, leadership, community-first strategy, regional investment. If they execute, this isn't just another league. It's a blueprint. And the big picture, the future of women's basketball doesn't have to be zero-sum. Multiple leagues can grow the ecosystem if they're built on equity and inclusivity. Communities win, players win, fans win. This sport works better as a network, not a single pipeline.
Exactly, Auntie says. The Upshot League reminds us that women's sports are not just entertainment. They're about economics, culture, and empowerment. And while this league is still young, its decisions in the first season will ripple through the sports for years. How it hires, how it markets, and how it invests in players and communities will define whether it's a footnote or a movement. So here's the call to action for our listeners. Pay attention. Support intentional growth in women's basketball. Engage with the Upshot League, attend games, stream matches, and amplify the stories of the players, coaches, and communities involved. Use your voice to ensure leagues like this succeed in creating real opportunity and equity. And let's not forget the power of advocacy. If you care about representation, about equity, about giving HBCU athletes and smaller market players the platform they deserve, get involved. Follow these leagues, share their content, and hold a conversation in your own networks. Change happens when communities and fans set up alongside leadership. Because at the end of the day, the women's basketball is bigger than one league or player. It's about an ecosystem we all build together. And the Upshot League, it might just be the first domino in a series of changes that grow the game while shifting the power in the right direction.
We'll leave you with this. Watch closely, cheer loudly, demand equity. The Upshot League is worth following, not just for buckets on the floor, but for the power moves behind it, the communities it touches, and the future it can shape for generations of women athletes. Like, share, subscribe, and tell more fans that PoliSports Tea Time is where the truth gets sipped and systems get spilled. This is for the mamas in the bleachers, the uncles on the sidelines, the cousins watching from dorm rooms. We see you. Tap in with the Respect Her Game advocacy group and build with us. Remember, sports ain't just the games we play. It's the stories we tell, the gatekeepers we expose, the systems we unravel. PoliSports Tea Time every Tuesday and Thursday. We sip the truth, we spill the tea. Stay engaged, stay informed, because the game is bigger than the scoreboard. The game is culture, community, progress, and it's ours to push forward. This is Cess, your favorite auntie with Uncle Tendencies and Political Ill, reminding you, stay tuned. Talk soon. We out. Welcome to PoliSports Tea Time with BY's PoliSports.